Black achievement is etched in the faces of African Americans who have ascended to ever greater heights in society.
We often look at that as a measure of African American progress. Should we?
Well, I don't think we can really appreciate Black achievement until we understand the flip side of that, which is the Black struggle.
I asked public interest lawyer and founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, Bryan Stevenson, to help us put Black progress in perspective.
Success, when you just focus on achievement, it in many ways gives you a pass on reckoning with all of the things that have been done to make that achievement so impressive, to make that achievement so meaningful.
I first met Bryan in Montgomery in 2018, walking through the depths of a soul-crushing legacy, a memorial to over 4,000 lynching victims from across America.
They lifted these bodies up because they wanted to torment and taunt and terrorize other people of color.
When you and I visited the lynching memorial, the thing I have to tell you that struck me was how recent some of those atrocities occurred.
I think the first half of the 20th century says something really remarkable about the commitment of Black people to America, because you had terror lynchings taking place all the time. 6 million Black people flee the American South and go to Cleveland and Chicago and Detroit and Los Angeles and Oakland, not as immigrants looking for economic opportunities, but as refugees and exiles from violence. And yet in the midst of all of that, we're creating new ways to cope with the trauma, but to also succeed and achieve things.
And still breaking barriers today, but against echoes of the past. Consider the election of the first Black vice president came in the same year George Floyd died under the knee of a police officer.
We saw just a few weeks ago people carrying emblems of resistance to racial equality like the Confederate flag attack the Capitol.
Stevenson sees Black History Month as a moment for Americans to dig deeper.
I want people to learn things about the history of the Black experience that they don't know. I want them to understand that there were 2 million people who died during the Middle Passage and their bodies are at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and we've done nothing to acknowledge that. If communities across this country say never again can we tolerate white supremacy and racial violence and lynching and hatred and segregation, then we can get someplace that we haven't gotten to yet.
A place we can all aspire to be.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.